and thank you for joining us. Welcome to the Board of County Commissioners work session for Thursday, November 12th, 2020. And the topic today is preliminary budget review and the REIT Technology Fund, or REIT Tech Review and CRF contracts approval. I'm John Hutchings, the current chair of the board, and also present as Vice Chair, Commissioner Ty Menser, County Manager Romero Chavez, Assistant County Manager Robin Campbell, and I also see Denise Doty and Olivia Outman and Patty Rosetto. And apparently Commissioner Edwards will be joining us late. If you'd like to phone in to listen, the phone number is 360-252-9020, and your PIN number is 1234. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn right over to do I start with Robin? Just jump right into Robin Romero?
Yeah, I think what we're going to see is just go through the preliminary decisions that you made related to the overall budget, particularly the general fund. And then there's a couple outstanding items that has created a little bit of a conversation. One is the REIT Technology Fund. During that conversation, County Assessor Stephen Drew might be joining the conversation. So hopefully, I know that he has a conflict. Hopefully we can get to that point before he goes to his next commitment. I think it's 10:30 if I recall well.
We'll work around that. Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, and also the last item I mentioned to you that we're in the process of making sure that all the coronavirus relief funds are spent. There were perhaps some outstanding contracts. If that is the case, we will ask the board to give us approval to continue on with those contracts, just to make sure that we spend the money on time. With that, Robin?
Thank you, Romero. I do want to be mindful of the assessor's other prior commitment. So I'd like to recommend that we send the link to join this meeting to both Assessor Drew and to Treasurer Gadman, and that we start with that item as soon as they can join us.
Yeah, I'm sending it right now.
Great. So while we wait for them to join, I am going to just give you a bit of background about what the conversation has been so far. As you're aware, in 2016, the Board of County Commissioners approved an FTE for the assessor on the condition that it would be paid for out of the REIT Technology Fund. This was done at the request of the assessor with the support of then Treasurer Sean Myers. Over the last few years, as you have heard, there have been concerns that if the position was fully charged to the REIT Technology Fund, that fund would quickly be exhausted and the assessor would be left with no way to pay for the position. But what the instruction of the board has been each year is that they would consider funding it from the general fund at the time that the REIT Tech Fund is exhausted. So the direction of the board in the appropriation documents each year has been that the position is paid for mostly out of REIT Tech Fund. You did authorize $10,000 of general fund money to partially pay for the position, but mainly it's to be paid from the REIT Tech Fund. This came up again as you reviewed the 2021 budget, and one of the things we talked about was the need for a financial plan. So I have the financial plan to share with you this morning. And I've been working over the last 2 days with the assessor and the treasurer about what to put into that financial plan. And I'm going to go ahead and share that plan now.
Commissioners, do they have a hard copy with you? We just distributed that this morning.
I don't have a hard copy of the financial plan. I just got the last numbers to plug into it, so I don't have a copy for the board.
No, I do. That's the
We
email
do.
that's the email that we received this morning. I just made a copy of what we had just a few minutes ago. But
Oh.
anyways,
Okay.
There's two though. What are they? They're not the same.
All right.
Yeah, I don't understand the difference.
So I'm going to share my screen, and I'll see if what I have is the same as what you have. So what you see on your screen may not be quite the same as what you have in front of you. This is the copy that the treasurer sent me on Tuesday.
And we have this one, yes.
You do have this one that has 38,000 in revenue starting in 2021.
Yeah.
All right. So this is what I received. It estimates revenue of 43,000 in 2020, and it projects 38,000 per year in future years. This is all revenue in REIT, not just the REIT fees. And then if you look at the expenditures, this is the amount that they had sent for the position, supplies that come out of this fund, and then professional services. The position, and I think the supplies are in the assessor's office, and then the professional services are in the treasurer's office. I took the liberty, and I did let the treasurer and the assessor know, of making amendments to this financial plan. And here is the amended plan. I split out the REIT from other revenues. So what you see here is in 2020, I looked at REIT revenue collected to date. It's $35,389 year to date. That includes a negative amount in March because of an accounting accrual. So I looked at the last 3 months of collections, which were August, September, and October, the most recent 3 months. And I took the average of those 3 months, just below $5,000, and I applied that amount for November, December, and 13th month accrual that we'll see that will offset the negative amount in March. And I came up with an estimate for 2020 of just over 50,000 for REIT. So I put that amount in. We're also collecting interest on this fund. I estimated that at just over $1,700, which is, again, year to date plus an allowance for the last 2 months of the year. And so based on this adjusted revenue, I then projected the next 3 years based on the Economic and Revenue Forecast Council estimates. And you see that the council, the Washington State Council, has estimated for REIT that there will be a downturn in 2021 of 8.4% down, rebound in 2022, 9.2% up, and then kind of an adjustment year, if you will, in 2023 of a negative 2.5%. So that's what the Forecast Council is estimating for REIT. It may or may not reflect what happens in Thurston County. Our real estate excise taxes have been robust, but I did apply the forecast council, and that's where I get this elevated number for revenue that is significantly more than the treasurer had estimated. Now, Treasurer Gadman made some conservative estimates, and his reasoning for doing so is very good. There are concerns that the real estate market will not remain as robust as it currently is. There is the single housing market is pretty strong, but commercial real estate is softening. It definitely is. So the actual revenues could be somewhere between 38,000 and 45,000. So, personally, I think the Treasurer Gadman's low. He thinks I'm a little high. It's probably going to be somewhere in the middle. So bear that in mind. Then on the expenditure side, this morning, our assessor has sent me the amounts that he asked me to use for salaries and benefits. He asked me to use $87,000 in salaries and benefits for next year. I added a 2% per year increase to that amount in all future years. The other thing I added in is, as you can see, the treasurer's been paying not quite $8,000 a year in professional services. The budget includes $10,000 for the treasurer, so I went in and laid in that amount so that we were not remiss in accounting for what the board is appropriating. So you see that the expenditures in my worksheet are significantly higher than the amount in the worksheet that I received on Tuesday. So higher revenues, higher expenditures. You will also note that in 2020, there is no expenditure for salaries and benefits. And that's why we're here this morning. It was brought to my attention earlier this week that the assessor has been choosing to bill the cost of this position to the general fund. And the conversation that I had with the assessor is that the board has appropriated this position to be paid from the REIT Technology Fund. And I let him know that I would be contacting financial services and asking them to move these costs to the REIT Technology Fund as the board had appropriated them. And he asked for a conversation with the board before I did that. So that's why we're having this conversation today. If we were to bill, if you will, the salary and benefit costs this year, I'm not quite sure how much is appropriated this year, but let's say it's roughly $70,000 this year would be the cost of this position.
To the general.
This is what your fund would look like. And again, there is an opinion that my revenue estimate is high. But this fund would go in the red in 2023.
So excuse me for jumping in. I am on the call.
Great.
I do have a hard stop to set up for another Zoom call at 10:30 as a trustee at SPSCC that I cannot miss. And I want to be sure that there's time for y'all to ask me questions.
Okay. Well, thanks for joining us, Stephen. And also thank you, Treasurer Jeff, for joining as well. This is what we decided just this last Monday, or was it last week that we decided on this? 'Cause I remember we chatted about this whole issue. I just don't remember which day it was. I'm asking Robin. Do you remember when we decided as a board on this issue?
So the issue for 2020 was decided last week, but the budget each year has included this position with the intention that it be paid from the REIT Technology Fund.
Right, I remember that. And so, do we have others that are other directors or officials, elected officials that have conflict with some of the decisions the board's made yet?
I have not heard from others.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll open it up to the commissioners to ask Assessor Drew questions. Or Stephen, do you want to open up with a preamble and kind of give us a rundown?
Well, I would appreciate that.
Go ahead then.
So going back to when this the REIT funds by statute became available for, as it says in statute, maintenance of a property valuation system. Going back to that point in time, we got a legal opinion from the prosecutor that said that includes personnel, software, mailing expenses, computers. So basically the tools that we use in our office. And at that time we had a budget cut, and we needed to not see a further attrition in the number of appraisers, or we couldn't get our job done. So we proposed funding a appraiser assistant position out of REIT. And so the test that was applied to that question was about sustainability. It was about whether, because we were going into the first biennium budget, whether throughout the biennium budget there was going to be adequate money. We were confident there was going to be adequate money in the REIT fund to fund the position. And then 2 years later, when we entered this budget process for the biennium that we're ending now, the same test was applied. Is there enough money in the REIT fund to guarantee that the position can be funded? And if there was, we were allowed to continue with the FTE. So as I've approached the consumption of REIT dollars in the face of an economic downturn where we expected REIT dollars to go down in this year, when until 60 days ago, I expected our discussion right now would be about a biennium budget. And then we shifted to an annual budget for this year. What I have been doing is managing my two funds for sustainability to be sure that I don't find myself asking you to fund a position that is not sustainable in the fund that it's funded in, and that I continue my record of not coming to you for midterm budget amendments or crises, which is where we would find ourselves when this fund runs out of money. And one thing Robin didn't say is the revenue inflow into the fund occurs monthly throughout the year. But the outflow for salaries, which also occurs monthly throughout the year, isn't flexible. You can't delay paying somebody. If it's dedicated from REIT fund and there are no dollars there, that creates a crisis. So I differ with Robin's strict interpretation of the action that was taken by the council 2 years ago and 4 years ago. What you did is you appropriated an amount of money, REIT money, from the REIT fund into the fiscal year. And you appropriated simultaneously an amount of general fund dollars into my general fund. And that is different from mandating that I spend that money. If the parallel would be if I didn't have the FTE, would be to mandate that I spend the REIT money anyway. And so what I have done for 10 years is manage my budget responsibly I have not come to you with emergencies, even when I've had, like when the senior exemption was changed and we had to incur $35,000 in public outreach. Didn't come to you for a budget amendment. We went without things that we needed in order to fund that in the year that we needed to do that. It was a greater priority. And the same philosophy is what led to my choice to fund this position through savings in my general fund budget, so that I would not find myself at this point in time, this is going back to the beginning of this year, when we expected the REIT inflow to be down, when I expected that we were going to be in a biennium budget discussion, would not find myself at this point in time with the inability to forecast enough money in the REIT fund throughout the biennium. And so that's how I've managed this fund. And so I ask for commissioners to continue to give me that latitude to manage my funds responsibly. I only have two. It's 100% general fund, with the exception of this budget dust of REIT dollars. And this ability to have this additional FTE not justified as an ongoing expense in the general fund is critical to my operation as a stable position. So when we don't have turnover, we don't have the ability to promote a trained, accredited appraiser out of this position into a non-REIT funded position. And when we have our discussions in council meetings and budget discussions at year end and updates, my REIT employees keep track of the discussion about REIT. They feel exposed to uncertainty different from the rest of the employees in my office. And so my intention and my request is to allow me to proceed to manage my two funds to the best of my ability for the taxpayers of the county of Thurston, and to not box me in unnecessarily, inappropriately, to spending down a fund to where I have to come to you for a crisis to refund a position. And that's the path that we'll be on if you follow Robin's request. We'll be on a path of having me come to you with a budget request, consuming your time and staff time for what, $60,000. When I at that very moment, I have that amount of money in savings in my general fund. I won't have the ability to do the right thing and to have sound and balanced management moving forward. So, I mean, this is crazy to me. And there are a lot of examples in the county where funds are managed in this way. And so to tamp down on the poor little assessor with his one fund that gets about $50,000 a year is just, it's insanity. Even that we're taking your time today is insanity to me.
Okay, can we not call it crazy insanity, and some of that rhetoric is not very helpful to the conversation, Assessor.
Well, sorry about that, but my word, there are bigger fish to fry.
Okay, I'm going to turn to the treasurer, Jeff Gavin. Do you have anything you'd like to add to the conversation, sir?
I just want to go into, Robin mentioned that I had a little bit different estimate on the REIT revenue. And I got to say, this is the very first time I've witnessed Robin being more fiscally optimistic than me. So that brought a smile to my face.
Don't do that when I have a mouthful of water.
I do believe that the residential market is going to continue to be very, very robust and active. We continue to have more people moving into Washington State, and I don't think that's going to stop. My concern is with the commercial market, specifically offices and retail. The office market is going to depend on how. So with so many people working from home, businesses have discovered that they can be successful without supporting that office infrastructure. And in fact, a lot of the state agencies are making plans to permanently only have half of their staffs in the office at any given time, even after COVID is done. And we rely very, very heavily on the state owning, or not owning, but leasing office space from private investors. And so I'm not as confident that that commercial market is going to be very robust or extremely robust until some of the excess office space gets soaked up, and that could be years. I mean, you guys have witnessed it up here on the Hill. The state has abandoned any lease space they could possibly get out of without incurring a penalty. Retail people, you know, the COVID thing has done a lot to change our society, and people are very, very comfortable shopping online right now. I don't anticipate that will stop. I don't think the human need to tactily touch something before they buy it will ever go away. But I just don't know what kind of demand there's going to be for retail space too. So I did predict conservative, and I did do that with some trepidation. I mean, this year, REIT has been very, very up and down, and it's just been driven by the pandemic. But we've had 3 of our best months since 2005. So, and in fact, October was our best October since 2000. So I went conservative just because I felt like I should. But and I also want to clarify that this fund is shared by the assessor and the treasurer. It actually lays in the treasurer's office. So the assessor and I, working together, have come up with this plan, and both of us are on board with it.
Okay, thank you, Jeff.
Jeff, could you talk about refinance REITs and the trend?
So refinancing, obviously, right now is huge, right? I mean, you could take your 4.5% mortgage and turn it into a 3% mortgage or less. If you're willing to go 15 years, which a lot of people close to retirement are doing, you could get a 2.5% loan. I don't anticipate another huge drop in the mortgage rates. So you're going to see the refinancing activity start to slow down because people are in their 2.5% loan.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioners, do you have questions of Robin or the assessor or the treasurer? Gary?
I don't know that I have questions of either one, but I do have concerns. I find it hard to believe we're sitting here talking about this amount of money, and we're trying to micromanage the assessor, it looks like to me, and I don't see any need for that. The public elected the assessor to do a job, and I don't think we ought to micromanage. So if we can give him the flexibility legally to do what he's laying out, I don't understand the objection to doing so.
Okay. Commissioner Menser? Questions or comment?
I guess I'm on board with what Gary just said. I mean, if I understand the whole situation, it seems like the assessor has absorbed the cost of an FTE into his budget, but he has the REIT technology fund as a backup. I agree with him when he says there's a lot of examples. I mean, I'm constantly hearing examples of the sheriff's, done this and that with vacancy savings, prosecutors done this and that with vacancy savings. So it seems like we give the latitude to the departments to use the extra money they're able to wring out of their allotment in the ways that they think is right. And if the idea here is to extend the life of the REIT technology, that makes sense to me. I mean, is there a problem with that arrangement? Is there something we have to do, Robin, to kind of reaffirm the flexibility that the assessor needs? Or is there some reason we shouldn't be letting him do that? I mean, I'm not really hearing it, but if there is something out there, I need to hear it because I'm not getting it at this point. It seems reasonable to me.
The decision is completely up to you. Don't know if you have this document or not. But what this is your appropriation document. This is the one for 2020. And the appropriation to the assessor is for 31 FTEs to be paid from the general fund and 1 FTE to be paid from the REIT technology fund. And the conversation every year has been how much more of that should be paid from the general fund. And the direction given by the board has always been pay from the technology fund. And early on, and again, this is, yours to decide, but the initial conversations were that the board preferred to preserve the general fund and spend down the REIT technology fund. That was the direction that was given, and that has been reflected in your appropriations. But if your direction is to allow the flexibility for this FTE to be paid from general fund, then that's your prerogative.
Okay. Well, I know, I think, I may have this wrong, but I think there was a assessor's a budget request to shift some of the money, and we didn't approve that. So, I mean, so in light of that decision, this request for flexibility is not asking us for more money. It's not, it's just creating flexibility. So I don't have an issue with it.
I don't. I agree with both my seatmates. The only, however, is I don't see as micromanaging an elected official or the assessor in particular, because our responsibility is to allocate funds and budgets. And I remember the previous conversations over the years that we decided as boards to have that fund or that employee paid out of, or that position out of the REIT tech, and the way it's been split over the last several years. I also understand, one of the things I want to be sure is that what we do is legal. And I understand your assessor, that your employees, that limits you in moving your employees up and around, and their consternation being paid out of the REIT fund. I guess my question is this, after I compliment you, Robin, and your team, whether you're conservative or liberal in your estimations, I put complete trust in what you and your team do. I really do. And but this, if we go with this would be a $70,000 hit to the general fund in totality, or an increase over the REIT by 70. How does that work? What's that? Because I know the board's focus has been the general fund, not spend down the REIT or save the REIT.
Right. So if the assessor charges this amount to his general fund, then basically what he's doing is reverting less money. If he were to spend it out of REIT as appropriated, then he would be reverting more money in the general fund. So it is a hit on the general fund balance. That was not intended by the board.
About how much, do you know? Just kind of a real rough, raw estimate.
Roughly $77,000.
77,000. Okay.
Yeah, the price of an FTE. I would also say that Commissioner Menser, you compared with other departments that have flexibility. If they're spending less in one area, they spend more in another. That is within one fund, because what the state law says, and I'll pull up the RCW, is that the budget authority is by law classified by the detail adopted by the board. And in Thurston County, we do that by fund and department. And that once the appropriation is made, that every county official is limited in making expenditures based on the appropriation from the board. Now, the assessor is absolutely correct. He's not spending more than the appropriation in general fund. But the direction of the board has been that that FTE is to be paid for from REIT technology. So again, if you'd like to change that direction, that is your choice.
Okay, Stephen, you've leaned in a couple times, so I'm guessing you want to talk.
Well, my time is slipping away with this
Yeah.
conflict, and thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I would just say, referring back to that RCW, I've done nothing that conflicts with that RCW. I am not deciding to spend the REIT money on something different than what it was appropriated for. I'm simply deciding not to spend the REIT money for what it was, though it was appropriated. So in my general fund, I could hire an extra help employee who happens to be an appraiser assistant and fund that position completely out of the general fund, so long as I don't overspend the general fund. And I'm essentially doing the same thing here. My objective a year from now, when the commission is in deliberations on a biennium budget, my objective is to have the ability to work with Jeff to manage this fund so that I can sit before commissioners in the deliberations and assure you that if the FTE is funded in REIT, that there will absolutely be enough money to carry that position through the biennium. And I'll not be able to do that, particularly if we retroactively pull money from REIT for this year. We've been paying for it all year with general fund. We've been not buying things that we need in order to save room to do that. That's the way we've managed our fund this year. At the beginning of the year, it was because we thought we were going to be in a biennium budget discussion at this point. And now my desire is to look to the next biennium budget process a year from now and make sure that Jeff and I have a fund that sustains our planning for that fund through the next biennium. So I need to sign off with respect to everyone, but my plea is to allow me to manage the funds that I have to the best utility, to the best benefit of the taxpayers. And if there's some structural problem with how we've appropriated money from REIT or in the budgetary process, then I would say detach it from a specific FTE if that's what it takes to correct the problem. Have it be an amount of money to fund the FTE and simply appropriate an amount of money not tied to an FTE. The problem with that suggestion is that somewhere you have to create the FTE. And so if you create the FTE in the general fund, then in theory, you're obligated to continue to fund that FTE. So I believe that the way that it was done was correct. That is, tying the FTE and guaranteeing the FTE with REIT dollars. What I have a problem with is mandating that I pay for the FTE out of REIT. So it's a dedicated fund. It can only be spent, that is a dedicated appropriation. It can only be spent on that FTE. But it's different from saying that I must spend that money on that FTE.
So since your time's limited, can you hang out 60 seconds, maybe 90 seconds more, and you may hear direction from the board?
Yeah, I do have a couple minutes, say five minutes. Yeah.
Okay.
I would like a comment at some point, Commissioner, if you may.
Oh, go ahead. You have the floor then, Romero. Go ahead, because I'm going to go back to the commissioners.
So I appreciate the conversation. First of all, I apologize to the board if the board feels this is a waste of time to have this conversation. And I believe the intent and the mission of the staff is to make sure that we will carry the direction of the board as we see it. And when there's deviations within that direction, it is our responsibility to bring this matter to your attention. And I believe this is the purpose of this conversation today.
Mhm.
So and again, I apologize if the board feels this is a waste of time and a waste of your valuable time in having this conversation. So certainly you're in the position to change direction as you see fit. But again, our responsibility is to bring those issues before you based on what we believe the direction was provided by the board.
No apology needed, Romero, because you have, and Robin and her team have been doing the direction of the board, implementing the direction and the guidance of the board. And so when the assessor and or the treasurer come to us, I mean, this is a good conversation. It's not a waste of our time in any way, shape, or form. Commissioner, I'm going to go back to the commissioners, knowing that Stephen Drew's time is very limited. And are you ready to give direction, or do you want further conversation? Ty? Well, I went to you first last time. I'll go to Ty.
I guess the Robin's point about the hit on the general fund because there'd be a reversion. I seem to remember you describing that the assessor is like a superstar at he's basically, he nails his budget on the head. So I take him at his word when he says that he's foregoing expenditures that his office needs. And if he wasn't doing this and trying to manage this fund, he would be probably making those expenditures. So I don't see it in that way. In terms of like, oh, it's a hit on the general fund. I think he's got an appropriation. He's doing it. He's doing it logically. So I don't have a problem with the flexibility and whatever needs to happen. In terms of language, I have to leave it to you guys. I don't know how this mechanically should be structured, but I'm okay with and I also, just on Ramiro's point, absolutely not a waste of time. I'm learning about this is kind of technical, and I'm learning about an issue that's important. And I'd heard, I wasn't part of the board that made this original setup. I remember hearing about it when I was sitting in the audience as a candidate thinking, what is that all about? So I'm glad to kind of learn more about it. Yeah, it's good discussion. I like learning these kind of intricacies of our budget.
Gary, go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to point out that in my estimation, there's a big difference between a department director that we might micromanage and an elected official that's answerable directly to the public. And because of that, I don't like the idea of micromanaging, but I don't know all the ins and outs of this. And is there any reason? I know Commissioner Hutchings, the drain on the general fund. I respect that. We're always watching that. But on the other hand, we're wanting to extend this REIT fund out as long as it can go. Could there be something in there that says that half of the salary of the FTE has to be paid out of the REIT fund or something? That would extend it. And it would also prevent the general fund from being hit quite as hard. So somehow, so we can do this to give a fellow elected official flexibility. That's kind of where I'm headed, but I want to make it all work.
When we talked to it, Robin brought up the impact of the general fund. I think she used the word impact. I use the word hit. You use the word, Gary, drain. Those are kind of like negatives, but there is an impact, obviously, to the general fund. Again, Robin and her team and the county manager have been acting and implementing policy based on the board's direction. If the board's direction has changed or changing now and evolving, I'm okay with that too. Let me get to Robin real quick. Is what Gary said, does that make sense? I'm sure it makes sense to you. Ty, we're still trying to sort this out after 4 years making sense of it all. So Robin, with what Gary just said, balancing it out, isn't that what we're doing now or have been doing?
So the assessor has, for example, this year the assessor does not intend to charge any portion of this salary to the REIT Technology Fund.
Right.
So I heard Gary's suggestion as being a direction that perhaps at least half go to the REIT Tech Fund and half to the general fund. And for the other two commissioners, what I heard was complete flexibility for the assessor to decide. So I need clear
Okay.
direction.
All right. I'm all for letting the assessor direct, to do it that way, yes. Let him have the
I
direction.
am as well.
Aye?
Okay.
Okay.
So what I can do is write a proviso that goes into the budget that says, although the FTE is appropriated out of the REIT Technology Fund, the assessor has the delegated authority to choose where to bill the FTE costs.
And I know it's just for my only personal edification, but Jeff, how about a chin shake? Yes or no? How do you feel about that? Okay.
Yeah, I think it's good. I think, you definitely have the authority to appropriate money to us, and we appreciate that. We outline how we think we're going to spend it, but I think the flexibility is important.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Assessor Stephen Drew, any final thoughts or words?
Oh, I just thank you for your thoughtful deliberations. And I too appreciate all the work Financial Services does and Robin's team does. And I hope you know that, Robin. I appreciate you a great deal. I found this a little bit frustrating. I apologize for that, but I very much appreciate the discussion and the outcome. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, sir. All right. What's next on the agenda?
So I'm going to step out, but
Go ahead.
I look forward to more fiscally optimistic conversations with Robin.
Don't we all?
I
Thank you, Jeff.
much prefer to be optimistic rather than the doom and gloom.
Oh, I don't mean to paint you negative at all. I just think it was just a light moment there.
Yeah,
That's like the sky's not falling, the earth is rising.
Right. No, Robin is one of the best fiscal managers I've ever seen. So
Yep.
Thank you all. Happy Thursday. Enjoy your weekend.
All right. Bye, Jeff.
Thank you. Okay, good. That is a good outcome. So moving on to the budget. So we can certainly go line by line and just double check everything that you approved, but I don't, quite frankly, see the value in that, because you had robust conversations on Monday about the items in the general fund.
Good. That was my first thought.
Okay, so what I would like to do, however, is bring up the forecast model, because we have been working, I'm going to close this REIT fund worksheet. We have been working on refining numbers, and we are not there yet by any means. But one number that I do have that's changing, I'm going to take the highlight off the COVID monies. That's been approved. And instead, I am going to highlight the COLA. So we've been carrying an estimate of the COLA for 2021 specifically of $692,000. And we know now that it's going to be somewhat more than that. And the amount of the COLA, it is a 1.5% COLA. We are assuming that it is 1.5% for all county employees, and with the exception of elected officials whose salaries are governed by the Salary Commission. And the new COLA at 1.5% countywide will cost approximately $1,692,000. The general fund share of that, and this is still an estimate, but it is a little closer, is $879,000 this year, and it would carry forward at the same amount next year.
In 22.
Right, in 22.
Yeah.
So this model, you're still above $10 million in the fund balance. It's not a huge change, but I did want you to be aware that the amount is more than what we had been carrying. This model now does not include a COLA in 2022. That's something that we'll need to talk about next year, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have about this new amount. Other than that, this model stands as you saw it at the end of the day on Monday.
Okay. Gary, any questions?
Yes, on that sheet, Robin, you show for 2020 and ending fund balance at 20 million and in 22 million. What's the difference there? I heard you say it drops us down to just over 10 million.
So it's a little over 10 million in 2022. The ending fund balance in 2021 is estimated to be just under 15 million.
Yes.
The reason that it's significantly less than in 2020 is that the revenue goes down pretty substantially with the loss of the COVID money. That's taken out in maintenance level in 2021, but the spending continues at a higher level.
Okay, I mean, still, that's a little confusing how it goes from 22 million, we start out at, and we end up at roughly 15. I think revenue is going to be a little higher, obviously.
Because of the COVID money, right?
Yeah.
You see all the revenue in here?
Yep.
All the COVID, nothing of the COVID money is
Sure.
coming in 2021. That's the big difference.
But it still looks like we're going to be well over 10 going into 2022 eventually, so.
Yes. Yeah, 15 billion at the end of 2021.
Yeah.
The 11 million's projected for the end of 2022, not the beginning, the end.
Right. But I still say we can change regulatory policy somewhere along the line and increase that revenue stream, but we're not there yet. But I think the whole thing will work myself by making
Absolutely.
those adjustments.
And one of the reasons that the board opted to do an annual budget this year is because of the uncertainty in revenue and to give yourselves more flexibility as you start to consider 2022. So you've allowed yourselves some time, if you will.
Okay, I'm good with it, Hutch.
Ty, any comments or questions on that?
Good with Hutch on what? Was there a motion? Or something?
No, not at all. Just
No, I meant I'm done. I meant I'm done. Sorry, Ty.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just about the cost of living and the changes.
Okay, yeah, I have some questions. So one thing that I want to make sure that we are all on the same page is that this model that you're showing assumes that we're going to pass the resolution of substantial need and increase the property tax by 1%.
Yes.
And we haven't made that formal decision, but I just wanted my seatmates to be aware that this would change if we decide not to do that. We also, looking at this, and this goes back to comments I made at the last budget deliberation, can you go back to the other, the graph?
Yes, sir.
I mean, we passed our fiscal, I mean, I think we're in a, we're in a COVID environment, and I'm kind of, so that's why I tried to explain last meeting we had on this, that, and it's why we built flexibility into our principles. But the principles the adjusted principles that we adopted say, number one, by 2023, the board will strive to attain a 2-month ending fund balance. And we got to get off this notion that, oh, okay, we're above that black line, so we're good to go. That's been the attitude of the board, and we've changed that by adopting the Exhibit A budget and fiscal principles. So, there's so much uncertainty about revenue, and I think Commissioner Edwards is right on that to some degree, that I'm willing to go, and we're only doing a 1-year budget, so we can make adjustments if things don't come in. But I'm really not going to be very comfortable with just driving this. If this ends up being the exact reality, I'm not going to be that happy about driving this fund balance back down again. And then we've got the other issue that I just want to keep hammering of the road fund shift, and we've committed to reducing that by $250,000 a year, but it's still going to take a lot of years to get off of that, and the road fund is going to continue to suffer as a result. So these are things that we have to keep in mind when we make these decisions. Even though it looks like the fund balance is high right now, there's an artificiality to that when we've got COVID money in there, we've got road fund shift in there, we've got all that. The other question I had, those are more comments. My question then, I think I missed, Robin, what was the adjustment in the number for the COLA? My mind might have wandered, but what is the reason for your adjustment upward there? You had 692 before, and now it's 879.
79. So we've been working with HR over the last few days to get a more realistic number. And this is the updated amount that we have from HR.
But also,
Okay,
Robin, I'm sorry.
I'll go ahead, Ramir. Sorry.
On the cost of living, it is an assumption, as the board in the past has been, any cost of living you have given to all county employees. But that is not a given. Just want to make sure that you have the option, because the contractual obligations that we have is just with the unions that we need to provide a 1.5%. So, and this includes what previous board's direction has been. The cost of living will be granted to all county employees. So it's a little bit variation in that as well. I'm not saying that is related to the change in numbers. I'm just outlining the options that you have.
But that excludes elected officials, even though our salary is set by a commission. This cost of living is not extended to elected employees, correct?
That is correct.
No.
Thank you.
And I believe that we saw information earlier this year that the Salary Commission met and decided on no increase for elected officials for next year.
Correct.
I
That's
think
my recollection.
that's their recommendation.
Yeah, thank you.
Hutch, could I point something out?
Yeah, hang on just a second, Gary. Ty, did you get what you needed on the cost
I
of living?
think so. Yeah, my only follow-up there is on Ramiro's point. If we excluded, for example, the non-represented employees, what percentage? I mean, how much of a difference would that make? If there is.
I don't know if we have that handy or not, but we can certainly get it for you.
Just curious. I don't think it's really a.
I can tell you that at a minimum in my 10 years with the county, that the COLA has been consistently applied to both represented and non-represented.
Right. That has been the history, but I just want to make sure the board has those options.
Yes, it is certainly your prerogative to not extend it to non-represented employees.
Well, if Ty needs that number, wants that number, even just for information, that's fine, but I'm not interested in parsing them out. I think it'd be county-wide.
I'm good.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Gary.
I guess I'd just like to follow up on what Robin said on the salary commission recommendation that the elected officials will not get a change in salary. I'd like to point out that this board sent a letter to the salary commission with that type of recommendation, so the public knows where that came from.
So related to that as well, if I may, related to the salaries of other elected officials, the salary commission provided a recommendation to you. You can take a different direction with the other elected officials, not with your salary, with the other elected officials if you choose to do it. Because the salary commission just provide you with that recommendation. It's within the purview of the board to change or not the salaries of other elected officials. So the salary commission doesn't establish, provides recommendation in salaries. We want to make sure that you're also tracking on that.
And
That's with the exception of the judges, because that's not set by.
That's set by the state.
The
And
state.
also, you taking out yours because you do not have the option to change your salaries without, it's the salary commission who does that for yours.
Thank you. All right. Anything else on that topic, Robin?
Unless there's anything else you'd like to talk about regarding your preliminary budget decisions, we'll just to say that we are working to make sure all that gets in the system so that we can print the reports and get them out timely for the public's review.
All right. We commissioners were given a sheet on resolution 15831 attachment 1. It's the operating budget and FTEs by department. Are we going to go over that?
No, that was part of your REIT technology conversation. What you see is in the assessor's office. It's got that one FTE.
Uh-huh. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah. So that's not, we don't have that report ready yet for next year. Too soon.
Got it. Commissioners, anything else?
no, sir.
Anything, Ty?
No.
Robin?
Nothing regarding the budget. We do have one other item
Okay.
for you today, and that's regarding the coronavirus relief funds or the CRF money. As you know, we are winding down on use of the CRF, and you may have seen the email that I sent out yesterday to offices and departments, just reminding them that they have until November 23rd to make final expenditures on items that the board has authorized from the CRF, and then it's gone. And as you know, part of the strategy is to take anything unspent at that point and use it to pay for costs in corrections that we believe are eligible under U.S. Treasury guidelines, so that the county uses all of the CRF money that has been allocated to Thurston County. We want to use it in Thurston County for the benefit of Thurston County and not send it back to the state.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So one of the items, I had a conversation, I think it was on Tuesday, with Dennis Cesario and Brian Ferris, and just went down the list of IT items that have been allocated. And I want to say that the IT department has made a phenomenal effort to meet an audaciously high bar to get all of this technology ordered and on site no later than November so that we could pay for it timely. That was a huge lift for the department, and they've done an excellent job. They believe that they will be able to deliver everything on the list timely. And the one last item that they need your approval for is the purchase of something called the fishbowl inventory system. This is permission to waive competitive bidding under the emergency declaration and allow Dennis to sign a contract to purchase this software that is an inventory system for PPE. We looked at the other type of asset management systems that the county already owns. They really don't fit for this type of management of emergency assets. And so the purchase amount is just over $12,000. And I would ask you this morning to approve this request. I can print this out, but I have the motion on the screen.
But is this out of CRF money?
Yes,
No,
this
it
is.
is. Okay.
And we need you to take action now rather than at your next meeting so that we can get the software in and paid for.
Fishbowl inventory system, okay.
So do you have any questions about the contract?
Not about the contract. I just have a question regarding the leftover CRF money if it's not spent. But let's deal with this first. I have nothing on the contract. Did Gary or Ty question on the contract?
No, sir.
Okay. Yeah, I'm ready to go.
Okay. Commissioner Messer, would you like to read the motion? Can you see that on your screen?
Yes. I'll move to authorize a waiver from competitive bidding in accordance with RCW 39042801C under the Emergency Declaration Resolution 15907 and authorize the Information Technology Director to purchase Fishbowl as an inventory system that will assist the receipt and distribution of PPE, not to exceed $12,194.27.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to authorize a waiver from competitive bidding for the purchase of the Fishbowl as an inventory system. Any discussion on that, commissioners?
No, sir.
No? Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Great. We'll get that purchased and on site. Other questions that you may have about the CRF?
Yes, sir. Or yes, ma'am.
I do too, but go ahead, Gary.
I just want to make sure as we move forward on this, and I'm going to refer to, a mishap that happened over in Stevens County that I don't know a lot about, but there were 3 commissioners that were removed from office over there over some type of expenditure that wasn't quite kosher. And I think it had to do with CARES money. So all I'm asking is that whatever we do, are we making sure that we've got adequate review by legal on this whole business of the expenditure end of things? And we're running that by John Thunheim, our prosecuting attorney. Is everybody's bought off on that? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, Commissioner. All contracts have been checked with Scott Cushing in the prosecutor's office, and all purchases we've been running through Brandon Weber, the county's internal auditor, to assure that we are closely following state and federal guidelines.
Okay.
Everything done with this money, I'm very confident is legal.
I guess you said purchases. I hope that means expenditures.
Yes, sir, it does.
Okay.
Commissioner Menser, any questions about anything?
No.
My question, Robin, is regarding the any residual CRF money that's not spent. I don't want to send a check anywhere, but use it in-house. And we've already said it's going to go to corrections because they have the need. But is that
No, correction, it doesn't go to corrections.
where's it scheduled to go? Here's my question.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's just when it reverts, any excess I heard was going to go to the sheriff's office for whatever. But I just want to make sure that's not, I don't have any idea if there'll be any left or what that balance would be. But balance that with other needs, whether it be public health and social services, IT, anywhere else that may need some funding as well.
So we are running out of time to spend this money. And that is the crux of the matter right there. Congress could have extended our time to use this money and did not. So we are out of time on November 30th. We have to have paid for everything by November 30th in accordance with our contract with the state of Washington. Could we have used the money for other things in the community if we had more time? Yes, we could. Or things to support public health going into next year. Absolutely, there's going to be a need, but we do not have that latitude. So the plan that we have enacted, the strategy that we have, is that we are spending all we can on the items that the board has authorized. But if we run out of time, we are going to charge eligible correction costs to whatever is left. We've already done 2 million that way. I don't know how much more is going to be left. I'm in the process of trying to assess that, and hopefully we'll have some numbers next week. But we're trying to spend it as the board intended. But if we run out of time, we're going to use it in the county.
So, but
Okay.
a point of clarification with that strategy that we provided to the board maybe a couple of weeks ago. This is a strategy to make sure we don't leave any CRF funding on the table.
That's right.
And by the strategy of requesting reimbursement for past eligible activities within corrections, to give us the avenue to meet that intent. But that the reimbursement from Congress is going to make sure it doesn't go back to the sheriff's office, it goes back to the general fund. That's the fundamental difference that I wanted to clarify based on your statement, Commissioner Hutchins.
I understand that. Thank you for that. But I understand that. My question was, since we don't know, the only thing we know for certain is there's a hard stop or reversion. And I don't want to do that. The money has been given to us to allocate. Let's allocate it. And hopefully everybody's going to spend it. But rather than we get to the point of, for example, we have $1 million, $4 million. I understand designating it for costs that have been approved before. But if there was other areas, depending on the amount of money, can we spread it out rather than just go to corrections because it was approved before?
We have claimed every eligible dollar from every other place.
Okay, then.
So really, this is the best strategy. The other thing that this strategy does is because it's not an increase in the corrections budget, where we're paying for eligible costs that are already being incurred, it will put some money in our general fund that becomes available to use for COVID as we go forward. So we'll use that money to pay for the costs of the offsite court lease and the staff that are needed to support that space. As other needs come up during the year, you've set aside, it comes to just under $900,000 that'll be available to pay for COVID costs in 2021.
And we
So that is
park that in general fund?
Yeah, and that is why you see, as Commissioner Edwards pointed out, the ending fund balance of 2020 is $22 million. Includes those assumptions already.
Right, but what I'm hearing though is that the money has to be spent by end of November or it's sent back. But I'm also hearing though now that we have money in the general fund that doesn't have to be spent by the end of the month.
No.
It needs to be reported to Commerce as used, and we're doing that.
Okay,
It's been used for corrections activities, and now the money that might have gone to that is there, and it's sort of backhandedly creating our own extended deadline. We can use that money for future
There you go.
COVID
Yeah,
response.
that's on point. On point.
Yes,
Perfect,
that's
thank you.
exactly.
Got
And by the way, Thurston County is not the only county doing this.
And the only variance perhaps on the assumptions that you just made this morning, the $2 million set aside for COVID response next year, that could change based on where we are next month. And that is probably the only variable number. I don't expect to go down, perhaps maybe adjust a little bit higher. But we will keep you posted because that's the whole strategy behind this. We set aside as much we can to continue to respond to the emergency in 2021.
perfect. Very good. All right, what else do you have for us to chew on, Robin?
That's it for this morning.
Romero, anything?
No, sir.
Seatmates?
No, sir.
Nothing, Ty? All right. Patty, Denise, Olivia, thank you all very much. And we'll see you next time. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.